I'm Dan Jaspersen. I work for the marketing team at Sierra Trading Post. My grandmother is Japanese, and my grandfather lived in Japan as a missionary for 40 years. And so I have a deep family connection. I actually have family that live in Japan still. And so that kind of drove me to move to Japan when I was just out of college. I spent 4 years in Japan. I was working in international relations over there. I was an interpreter. I set up exchange programs and those sorts of things. On March 11th, 2011, there was a massive earthquake. It was a 9.0 earthquake, which is the largest in Japanese history. It's one of the largest in recorded history. And that was right off the coast of my old home, where I lived in Japan. I wanted to drop everything that I was doing and head back over to Japan. But then an opportunity came up through a church organization, and they were looking for Japanese speakers who could go over to Japan for at least 30 days and help out in a relief effort. And so my wife and I, we raised our hands and we said, let's go. There were quilts that were made by different church congregations across the United States and Canada. All said and done, we saw about 200 quilts. And so we handed those out to people who needed them. There were a lot of people that lost their homes, lost their livelihoods. Their families live in Tokyo or different parts of the country, and so they didn't have anything left. When I went over there, it was 9 months after the earthquake itself, and some of the areas were cleared. Some of the areas were cleared up, and the roads were gravel but clear. Other areas were still completely full of garbage, just full of rubble. About a half mile in from the bay there was this big tanker ship, huge. And around that, there were all these little kind of makeshift memorials. People would find things. As workers were coming through and clearing the rubble, they would find personal items like wristwatches or cell phones or jewelry or whatever, and they would kind of pile them up into these little makeshift monuments to honor the dead, to remember the people that had passed away in the earthquake. And we saw those everywhere. There was one around every corner actually in the disaster zone. When the church organization was looking for people to be able to volunteer and go over there, one of the requirements was that we could go for at least 30 days. Sierra Trading Post granted me a leave of absence where I went out over for 5 weeks, and they were actually very good about it, very supportive about letting me go and do this work. Looking forward, there's still a lot of work to be done over there, and I've been working directly with our buyers here at Sierra Trading Post to see if we can get some basic necessities like shirts and gloves and hats and those sorts of things at an even better discount than we already offer them, and to be able to send them over as a donation.